can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about S.W.O.R.D number 11 by Al Ewing and Jacopo Camagni. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down what Orbis Stellaris' intentions are. We're also going to talk about what could possibly be in Cable's near future should that techno-organic virus get out of control. And more importantly, why Abigail Brand is the most dangerous mutant to Krakoa. We're going to talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, so make sure you hit that bell button, that way you don't miss anything. Also, if you enjoy the video, Hulk smash that like button, because it really helps the channel out. That said, let's talk about S.W.O.R.D number 11. Okay, so this comic, and I want to go ahead and say right now, I believe this is actually the finale of the S.W.O.R.D series. It'll be moving on over into X-Men Red very soon, which for those who don't know, X-Men Red is going to be a new X-Men spin-off comic that will deal more with what's going on Mars rather than what's going on Earth. And also, this will be a team that you can very likely expect to see a lot of the same faces that you are accustomed to seeing in the S.W.O.R.D comic, as well as give a lot more focus towards the character Storm. But anyways, one of the main things that I really want to dig into here is what's going on with Orbis Stellaris. This is something that I didn't necessarily see coming, but I'm not surprised is actually developing. Now, 2 issues ago, we learned that Gyrick was working with Orbis Stellaris, this seemingly alien entity who created this catalog of mercenaries that could be sent out at a moment's notice. A variety of different types of techno-organic mercenaries created in mass production and also outfitted to basically be whatever their buyer wants them to be, whether it's as patsy supervillains or if someone needs an army to take down an entire planet. All of this has been under the guise of a company called Stellaris, led by a character named Orbis Stellaris. Now, the thing that kind of struck me as odd, and it had been bugging me ever since the character of Orbis Stellaris was introduced, I had wondered if this was any connection to another character who also goes by the same name, but I'm not terribly certain if this is actually the case. However, in this issue, we learn a little bit more about what Orbis Stellaris' intentions are, and more importantly, learn that this character is not exactly an alien. We don't really know much more beyond that, because Orbis Stellaris completely cuts themselves off before they can actually reveal who they actually are. They just mention that very few people know that they're originally from Earth. And we now know, thanks to Orbis Stellaris employing their lethal legion against Empress Xandra, that Stellaris is plotting something incredibly insidious. Now, just recently, it was revealed that Gyrick had hired numerous, massive numbers of lethal legion to take down Empress Xandra to try and destroy not just Earth's opinion of the X-Men and mutant kind and Krakoa and their ability to, quotey fingers, police the galaxy and the universe, but also to destroy Krakoa in the eyes of other galaxies and universal nations. If Krakoa can't protect the Shi'ar Empress from being assassinated, then what good are they going to be at policing an entire solar system? Now, this is typical Gyrick. Gyrick is more than willing to sacrifice any number of non-human lives to achieve his goals. Hell, he's willing to sacrifice any number of actual human lives to do this. But in the end, it all comes tumbling down because of one character and one character only, and that is the character Storm. Storm gets, and I want to point this out, that Al Ewing has literally been putting genuine respect on Storm's name since she has been appearing in these books, and he does it once again in this issue by gifting us a scene of Storm literally soloing an entire army of lethal legions with nothing more than air pressure. Now, granted, in the scene we see Storm pushing her powers possibly to their limit. She increases the air pressure to such a high level that she's able to effectively crush, burst, and destroy every member of the lethal legion that Gyrick had hired from Orbis Stellaris. Now, granted, this comes at a little bit of a cost because we witnessed during this scene, Storm begins to get a nosebleed. This is something that's typically associated with, and this is not just with X-Men, but just with any kind of science fiction. Typically, when your nose is bleeding, that means you're pushing yourself to your limit. This is something that is kind of hinted at as maybe exploring more of the Omega level mutants, to the point that there's even a line where Orbis Stellaris is even musing about how the Lethal Legion in their current incarnation are incapable of holding out against an Omega level mutant Earthling. And it's something that they're taking to heart, even pointing out when Storm says that their creator will hopefully have learned their lesson, that Orbis Stellaris replies, now of course only speaking to themselves, that they've learned a great deal, and that this was merely just a product test. This whole plan with Gyrich, there was no actual loyalty there, and that the moment that Gyrich realizes that his Lethal Legion has been cut off, that he is not going to get exactly what he wanted, and Orbis Stellaris completely cuts off communication with Gyrich. The real flip side of this is the fact that, well, yes, it did seem like Gyrich was actually intending to have Empress Xandra assassinated. It seems like he only wanted them to be mostly successful, to more scare her than anything else. But then it is later revealed that apparently Gyrich didn't have as much control over Orbis Stellaris as he initially thought. Gyrich apparently does have a little bit of a heart. He just wanted to scare the Shi'ar. He didn't want to start an intergalactic incident. But Orbis Stellaris seemed to have other ideas, because they throw out a line basically saying that, oh, you know, war is so famously bad for business after all, which is kind of funny because it seems like in the type of business that Orbis Stellaris is in, war would probably be the best thing that could happen for them. But once again, Orbis Stellaris is playing both sides of the fence. And of course, we know that because the Lethal Legion so handily defeated the Super Guardians and killed a good number of them, we now know that Orbis Stellaris is plotting to infiltrate the Shi'ar Empire by way of giving them a new army. Because basically at this point, he's exposed Empress Xandra's weaknesses in the people who are protecting her. Gladiator was single-handedly defeated by just one member of the Lethal Legion, who manipulated his mind into losing his self-confidence, which his power is based on, putting him completely out of commission and instilling a sense of no confidence in Gladiator from Empress Xandra. And now what Orbis Stellaris is plotting is to completely rename the company to create shell companies to hide behind, and then pitch a cell of a new Lethal Legion to the Shi'ar Empire and basically make a ton of money. We also know that Henry Peter Gyrich, being the patsy that he was to Orbis Stellaris, it is also revealed that Orbis Stellaris is likely going to find a new silent partner, but who that silent partner might be, it's hard to say. But considering this is a S.W.O.R.D book and it's largely going to tie to a lot of things going on in the rest of the Marvel Comics universe that Al Ewing has his hands on, I wouldn't be surprised if this winds up tying into some instances with the current Venom run that Al Ewing and Ram V are working on together. And I wouldn't even be surprised if this ends up continuing somewhere in X-Men Red, since it is a sequel to the series. The next thing I wanted to talk about is what's going on with Cable. Now, of course, in the previous issue, we learned that it was a part of the plan for WizKid, who is under the direction of Abigail Brand, to act as a mole for Henry Peter Gyrich to make him feel as though he had infiltrated Krakoa's space program. And to keep up this ruse, he set the S.W.O.R.D base to plummet into the Earth. And of course, we learned this is all, a fabricated ruse, but the only people who really know the truth about what's going on are WizKid and Abigail Brand, and WizKid doesn't even know as much as what he believes he knows that Abigail Brand is planning. And this is a really interesting incident because these are all things that Gyrich has been plotting for. These are all things he's been desiring to happen to cause such an incident that public opinion of mutants will only get worse, to the point that when it's revealed that S.W.O.R.D base, if not intercepted, will crash into Australia and likely kill everyone on that continent. It's at that moment when Guardian, who reluctantly threw in his lob with Gyrich because Gyrich instilled fear in him and played upon his fear of what mutants would accomplish and what this could mean for humanity, Guardian is now starting to realize that maybe he made a mistake, realizing that Gyrich is, well, for all intents and purposes, a son of a bitch, and he doesn't seem to care that there is going to be a continental disaster. Gyrich is treating this as though it's an acceptable amount of collateral damage to secure humanity's stake in the solar system. And fortunately, it just so happens S.W.O.R.D has a resident Aussie on their team by way of Manifold. For those who are not familiar, Manifold has the ability to, quotey fingers, teleport. I say quotey fingers because, as he describes it, his ability to open portals to anywhere in the entirety of the space-time continuum, it's not actually teleporting. What he's doing is he manipulates manipulates space by speaking, quotey fingers, speaking with space. So he is actually legitimately talking to the space-time continuum and convincing it to do whatever it is he desires at the time. And what he desires at the time is to keep the S.W.O.R.D base from crashing into the Earth. And ultimately, he is able to pull this off, exerting probably the most insane usage of his power I think we've seen to this point. And we've seen this guy transport the heat of the sun to the Earth. So, I mean, yeah, this guy's power levels are insane. I'm surprised he is not considered an Omega level mutant at this point, though that probably has more to do with the fact that Gateway is likely equally as powerful as he is, because we've seen Gateway do some pretty wild shit before too. That said, it's actually going to be the combined efforts of Manifold and Cable to get S.W.O.R.D base back into orbit, as it's literally about to crash into Australia. I mean, it literally breaches Earth's atmosphere and is mere seconds away from destroying all of Australia, and Eden Fezzi is able to push it back into orbit. And Cable, while he was struggling to hold it in place so that Manifold could pull off this amazing feat, all the while that meant Cable had to unleash his telekinesis. And for those who are unfamiliar, Cable's telekinesis is what he uses to hold back the techno-organic virus that he has been struggling with ever since he was born. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this techno-organic virus, it's sometimes referred to as the transmode virus, and while not exactly the phalanx, the aspects of this virus would remind you a lot of the phalanx, or even one of the Technarchs himself, Warlock. Cable exerting himself in this fashion causes the techno-organic virus to literally change even the way he speaks. He even starts using some of Warlock's speech patterns, referring to him as self rather than I or me, or even by his actual name. The techno-organic virus within his arm even begins interfacing with the rest of the S.W.O.R.D base itself. And while they're able to save the S.W.O.R.D base, the techno-organic virus in his body, it seems like it started to spread and get stronger just the same. Now, one of the things I thought that was pretty interesting about this, and maybe this is something that was brought before, but I never really ever thought about it in that particular fashion, is with everything going on right now, knowing that the Phalanx are going to play some major part in the future of the X-Men, at least if what we have learned from some of the previous stuff going on that Jonathan Hickman has introduced since House of X, and even as recent as Inferno, part of me wonders if maybe we're looking at the wrong thing. We keep looking at Cypher and Warlock as though maybe they might be the catalyst for whatever could possibly lure the Phalanx into the X-Men's orbit this time around, but now I'm starting to think maybe it might just be Cable himself, or maybe a mixture of Cypher, Warlock, and Cable. But right now, Cable is starting to become a little bit suspect, because because of this precise moment, we know that he has somewhat succumbed to the virus, and while he is technically saving face and trying to play it off, something tells me that this is going to come back to bite Cable, and not just Cable, but S.W.O.R.D as well as mutant kind and Krakoa as a whole, because this was a calculated measure. The reason why I say that is because S.W.O.R.D actually does have a true mole. Back in S.W.O.R.D number 3, it was revealed that Gyrich had a mole inside of S.W.O.R.D, something that Manifold was listening in on but didn't quite get the scoop on because he left before Gyrich revealed it. And then it was later revealed that the mole was WizKid, and we learned within that exact same issue that WizKid was playing Gyrich and acting as a double agent for Abigail Brand. Well, in this issue, we learn there actually is a mole inside of S.W.O.R.D base, one that isn't working with Gyrich, one that is going into business for themselves, and we discover this when WizKid reveals his true intentions to Gyrich. WizKid reveals that he has literally been downloading all of the information about Gyrich's operations, his connections to Orchis, everything that he has been plotting, everything he has been planning, and that he's going to send it to the Shi'ar Empire, which will pretty much put him on the shit list of an entire galactic empire. We also learn in this precise moment that Gyrich has been burned by Devo. Devo does not want anything to do with Gyrich anymore. When Gyrich tries to lock himself inside of an airlock to protect himself from WizKid, he gets shut down in it, and Devo refuses to translocate him out of there because up to this point, Gyrich has been a major player in Orchis, but it seems he was nothing more than a pawn to Devo, and Devo no longer finds him useful, especially if he's become the target of the Shi'ar Empire. Now, why would Devo know this? I'm pretty sure that Orchis, if they have ways of creating a Nimrod, I'm pretty sure they have ways of listening in on what's going on with Gyrich even when he doesn't want them to. The other issue is that Gyrich didn't realize that Abigail Brand was on the Alpha Flight Station. Now, of course, we learned in the previous issue she was using PIM particles to disguise her location by shrinking herself down to Ant-Man size and hiding on WizKid. And it's here that our traitor is revealed, and it's none none other than Abigail Brand. Abigail Brand has basically been playing us since the end of Empire. When Gyrick reveals that Krakoa isn't ready to lead the Soul System, Abigail Brand agrees. And she also reveals that she has no issue with Gyrick or Orcus taking Krakoa out of commission. She honestly doesn't care. She actually wants Krakoa to fail. The only issue that she personally has with Gyrick is that he's not good at taking Krakoa down, because honestly at this particular point in time, everyone who's tried to bring down Krakoa up to this point has either failed or their plans just haven't bared any fruit yet. Now, this whole deal with Abigail Brand is incredibly unsurprising, because at the end of the Empire event, Abigail Brand revealed that she was incredibly put off by the fact that not just the Avengers, but more specifically Captain Marvel didn't clue her in on what was going on with the Kotati, and that so many people died because Alpha Flight was not clued in on what was going on, and that she felt that they should have been in on it, and that if Alpha Flight was allowed to know what was going on, they could have possibly saved so many people that didn't have to die. This is something that galvanized Abigail Brand to going into business for herself, to make something new. We even saw it teased at the end of Empire Aftermath Avengers #1, and we've even talked about this moment in other videos I've done for S.W.O.R.D, that Abigail Brand wanted to make something that was better than Alpha Flight, something that could be the next big thing that nobody could deny. It's why she cut off Hulkling's ability to contact the Avengers or any other help for that matter when it came to dealing with the last annihilation, when Dormammu tried to plunge the entire universe into the dark dimension. Abigail Brand doesn't care anymore who she hurts, who she implicates, who is endangered by what it is she's trying to do. It was pretty obvious from the very beginning that Abigail Brand wasn't sold on the whole idea of Krakoa, though it did seem like somewhere along the road, at least when she was talking to people from other galaxies, that she was finally drinking the Kool-Aid. During the Hellfire Gala, it seemed like she was 100% bought in, but it was all just a ruse. She doesn't need Krakoa, she doesn't want Krakoa, and she doesn't even really want them to succeed. If anything, she is plotting for their failure, because at the end of the day, as Abigail Brand told us when we were reintroduced to her at the beginning of S.W.O.R.D #1, that she is a spacer first. She doesn't care about being a mutant. Being a mutant is secondary to her at best, and I would even say tertiary to her at best, because as she says, as if mutants aren't just another flavor of Earther. In the end, Abigail realizes that Magneto and Xavier aren't going to be able to handle what's coming, and more importantly, neither will Beast, and the only person she thinks even has even a little bit of a chance is Storm, and she still doesn't have 100% confidence that Storm is going to be able to weather what's coming, and I now realize the pun I just made, and I'm gonna totally own it. Point of the matter is that now Gyrick has served his usefulness to her, being a threat to Krakoa that mutant kind would focus on, that they wouldn't pay much attention to what Brand has been doing this entire time. Not only that, but she's also going to do something that is both unsurprising, considering her history with Gyrick, if you're familiar with the previous S.W.O.R.D series, where he ultimately screwed her over and basically tried to take her job as the leader of S.W.O.R.D base and even got her arrested. There's no real actual love lost there, but Brand is going to do something that is completely against Krakoan law. She is going to blast Gyrick into the vacuum of space, leaving him to die. And of course, she already has a plan. Of course, we know that Brand has been keeping all kinds of secret notes for herself, that if she's for whatever reason killed and resurrected, that she can know exactly what it is she's been up to. And she even reveals in her notes that her plan is to lie and say that Gyrick spaced himself for fear that he was going to be killed. Brand is up to all kinds of in this comic, and I am here for it. Brand is proving once again that she doesn't care about mutant kind. She doesn't even really care about Earth in general. She cares about the universe, the galaxy. That is what she's worried about the most. And whatever it is that's going on with her, she is not done by a long shot. She has more plans in place, proving even more that she is the Nick Fury of space, which is kind of something that I feel like fans have always kind of equated her to ever since she debuted in Astonishing X-Men #3 back in 2004. Like, she even points out that she orchestrated Cable's techno-organic virus getting out of control, even pointing out that right now Cable is in such a state that the techno-organic virus in his body is perfectly balanced between killing him and being too weak in his body to make use of. So this was all calculated. She wanted this thing to be just powerful enough that if he should get out of line, he won't be around for much longer. And in the event that the techno-organic virus was to get free or loose somewhere, whether it be on S.W.O.R.D base or on Earth or anywhere else for that matter, it wouldn't really be of much use to anybody. She even points out that she was perfectly fine with S.W.O.R.D base crashing into Australia, that even if Manifold and Cable were unable to stop it, that it would have been a perfectly acceptable loss to her as well, proving that she is just as much of a son of a bitch as Gyrick is. That Krakoa needs to fall, and man, dude, Abigail Brand is, like, I've always kind of been of the belief that Abigail Brand is someone who you just really should not trust. Abigail Brand is literally spinning all kinds of plates, and she's doing it masterfully, even keeping tabs on what's going on with Orcus, keeping tabs on the future of Alpha Flight, and whether or not Guardian is going to be the one to take it over or not, whether or not WizKid is someone she needs to keep an eye on, or whether or not he's still useful to her. Abigail Brand has literally been playing the longest of long cons in terms of working alongside Krakoa, getting herself appointed to being the leader of S.W.O.R.D base, and then just completely dismantling everything from the inside, being her own double agent. But anyways, this is the end of the S.W.O.R.D series. This whole story will likely continue within the pages of X-Men Red. I honestly cannot wait to see how this is going to play out, and I really, honestly, I kind of wish that, you know, as much as I'm interested in the whole X-Men Red thing, I actually just wish they would just continue this book, because S.W.O.R.D has been one of the, you know, right alongside Hellions. I feel like S.W.O.R.D and Hellions have been consistently some of the best books Marvel has been putting out in the, you know, X-Men's, you know, corner of things. But yeah, I mean, I still want X-Men Red, don't get me wrong, but man, I would be perfectly fine if they just continued all of this within S.W.O.R.D. I mean, yeah, it's great that Storm's getting the X-Men book. That's great. That's all well and good. She's getting a new costume and all this stuff, but I feel like this is all stuff that could have been done within this comic. And maybe the rebranding was for a reason. Maybe it was done because they felt that X-Men Red was a more marketable title than S.W.O.R.D, but I feel like S.W.O.R.D speaks for itself. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. But anyways, let me know what you thought about S.W.O.R.D number 11, the finale, and the series as a whole. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.